Let's pause, shall we? Dear kind and merciful Heavenly Father, please lead and guide us with regards to our studies. Help us to open up ourselves to Thee and to the person of the Mashiach Yeshua, and for the Spirit of truth to communicate with us that which is truth. Help our hearts and lives to be yielded, that Thou mightest receive the Hakavad, the very highest form of esteem there is. We'll ask it in the name of Yeshua and for Thy sake. Amen. Prayer is defined in Scripture by the Hebrew word palal. According to Strong's, it is best translated thusly: to intervene, interpose, pray. PL, to meditate, judge. Hithpal, to intercede, to pray. According to Google, prayer. The solemn request for help or expression of thanks addressed to God or an object of worship. I'll say a prayer for him. Invocation, intercession, devotion. The priests murmured prayers. A religious service, especially a regular one at which people gather in order to pray together. 500 people were detained as they attended Friday prayers. A earnest hope or wish. It is our prayer that the current progress on human rights will be sustained. Praying to me is communion, communication between the Supreme Being of the universe, as a dialogue between him and man, taking on a variety of forms, but most commonly found in verbal expression on the part of the supplicant. The very first interaction between Elohim and man occurs in the Garden of Eden. This has Elohim speaking the word. We read in Genesis 1 verse 27, so Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. And Elohim blessed them. I'm going to go ahead and read on now through the 31st verse. Elohim said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have mastery over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And Elohim said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And Elohim saw everything that he had made. Behold, it was very good. There was evening, there was morning, the sixth day. Perhaps this explains the Christian belief commonly taught that God initiates prayer, whether by circumstance or extremity, contending his way of getting our attention. Prayer is very essential to any expression of faith. The communication in the garden consists primarily, we notice, of instructions. It is supposed that man could interact on a level with Elohim, which sin prohibits today. I think it can be argued that man had some kind of tangible contact with his Creator, perhaps saw him in some form, as Genesis paints a picture, at first, of an unbroken relationship between Elohim and man. In Genesis 2:15 through 17, and Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest eat freely, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat. For in the day thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. Again, at best, instructions are given. This all changes in short order. In the interlude, Elohim makes a woman from an entire side of man, so that he can have the benefit of a companion. But an interesting thing occurs when a snake enters the picture in the form of Nakish, the serpent. Seduced by enticement, woman disobeys Elohim and entices her husband also to disobey. And we are familiar with that story. It's told to us as children. When our parents ate the forbidden fruit, in defiance of Elohim, with rebellion and sin entering the picture, we see an immediate change in the relationship. Genesis 3:8. They heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim amidst the trees of the garden. Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam, and said unto him, where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked. So I hid myself. And he said, who told thee thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I have commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the man said, the woman which thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Yahweh Elohim said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And Yahweh Elohim said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this thing, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth thy children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I have commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the day of thy life. Thorns and thistles will I bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. The sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread. Thou wilt return to the ground, till thou wilt return to the ground, till thou return into the ground, for out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. It is presumed that Elohim and man walked together in the cool of the day through the garden, prior to the tumultuous incident changing the equation. In any event, confrontation ensues. The confrontation demands accountability, and when guilt is ascertained, punishment is meted out. When man is banned from the garden, driven out. This seems to be parental in nature. Man has broken the rule and is punished. In language not unlike when a parent grounds, severely limits his rebellious child, exercising parental discretion. As to the dire warning in the beginning, that the severity of punishment is death on the day the rule is broken, it might be argued that love mitigates or modifies it down to an immediate grounding or a severe punishment, with it being harder now that you have disobeyed than if you remained faithful and obedient, and with a postponement of that death which is promised. By the sweat of your brow is the punishment. And many a Bible student has questioned why men didn't perish on the spot. One book later, we find a possible explanation. Late in Exodus, under the Mosaic administration, 34:6, and Yahweh passed by before him, that's Moshe, and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh El, merciful and gracious. That means merciful. That means full of mercy. Long-suffering and abundant in goodness, kindness, and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, that there will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children unto the third and fourth generation. Returning to the book of our study, it is noteworthy that it took man some time to die. In Genesis 5:5, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. So he died 70 years short of living to 1,000 years. It took time for another man to appear on scene past the fall, whom Yahweh would develop a rapport. Now, according to Dake Reference KJV Bible, there are instances of 222 prayers found throughout the Word of Truth. 6 prayers in Genesis. Abraham for an heir, 40 words in Genesis 15:2-3. Answered because Elohim had promised in Genesis 21:1-8. Abraham for Ishmael to be his heir, 7 words in Genesis 17:18. Unanswered because it was not in harmony with Elohim's word and plan. Abraham for Sodom to be spared if 10 persons were righteous. That's 176 words. Genesis 18:23-32. Unanswered because 10 righteous persons weren't found. In Genesis 19:24. Eleazar, steward of Abraham, for a bride for Yitzhak, 110 words in Genesis 24:12-14. Answered because it was according to Elohim's word in Genesis 12:1-3, 7, 13, 15, 15, 18, 17, 7, 19, 20, 1, 12. And 5, Yaakov for a blessing in Genesis 28:20-22.